Town Council meeting to order. To continue our budget discussions, this is the last night where we're going to be reviewing the budget. So I'll turn it over to Town Manager Corey for the first item, which is troopers and law enforcement.
Great, thank you, Chair. So tonight we're gonna run through, as you said, troopers, Connecticut State Police are our resident state trooper budget, followed by our human services budget. For the resident state troopers, we have Lori Sherwood, who is the admin for CSP, and Trooper Shepherd. Our trooper is on way of leave, so Trooper Shepherd is filling in as the temporary admin. Next will be human services with Melanie and Teresa Christoph here to cover all the human services. That followed by the senior center with Kyle Sandness here to cover that, and then our recreation department, Bruce Watt is here to talk about that, and then the board of education, Dr. Willett is here as well. So let's start out with, as you said, the Connecticut State Police resident trooper program here in Tolland. As you know, the town of Tolland does not have its own police department, so we use the Connecticut State Police Resident State Trooper Program. We have 4 resident troopers and an admin. The total budget I'm proposing is $625,902. That overall budget reflects a decrease of $23,000 compared to fiscal year 2025 adopted budget. It's primarily due to replacing higher step troopers with lower step troopers and a fringe rate decrease. We removed at I believe Lori's recommendation, $100 for other equipment and $550 for training and development, as they handle their own training and development. So I'd like to thank Lori Sherwood for her efforts in doing this. And of course, if you have any questions, they're here.
All right, I'll open it up to questions from councilors. Do we have any questions either in person or online? I'll ask a question. All right, we'll take in a moment. In the bar chart up on page 3, the actuals is really low compared to the adopted budget. Assume we can get that lucky, but what's
Attrition.
Yeah.
Right,
So there's the contract
Yeah.
that usually comes around in May.
okay,
So that's why you don't see that
It's
high
a lump sum.
actuals. Yes, it's about 580, I think, or something.
Or you
That.
can add, yeah, we can do those.
And so that the budgeted amount is 563,000 for this year,
yeah,
and that should hit in May. So that's why you see only right now $55,107 as of March 18.
okay. That clarifies it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any other questions from councilors? Councilor Moran?
I think Brian mentioned it, but I forgot what you said. I know it's a small amount, but why is there no more funding for training and development?
The state pays for the troopers training
Oh,
and development. If Lori needed some training, though, we'd find it and get it.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Can't tell if anybody's hands are raised. Is there anybody on Zoom?
No, they would pop up. Right? They're raised.
All right, this last call on questions. All right, let's just move on. Thank you.
All right, moving on to human services again. Beth Melody, our directors here, and Assistant Director Teresa Christoph. Should you have any questions, I'm proposing a total budget of $390,224. An overall net increase of $30,966 or 8.62% compared to fiscal year 2025. The sole reason, the reason of that 27,000 is that we had a retirement. We delayed almost 6 months, I want to say, before we hired someone back. A known attrition savings that we could do in order to get the budget number that we wanted last year at budget time, if you remember. So last year, right at budget time, we had a vacancy. We did not fill it intentionally for 6 months, and it's filled now. So that's where the $27,000 increase of $160 due to the cost of a Zoom account. As you know, our human services does so much, the community outreach for so many of our town residents, case management of those, crisis intervention, our food and economic development, food and economic assistance, emergency aid, educational resources, and referral to state and federal programs if needed. Our Youth Services Bureau, we're required to have, as well as a municipal agent on the elderly, and a fair housing officer. We get a lot of grant support, in Human Services. Budget is supported by grant funding, compromising about 15.68% of their total budget, 61,000 in grant support, and that's a team effort. Our Youth Services grant's about $4,000, and our HVCC grant, which is basically our dial-a-ride, is $57,000, 30,000 of which is paid for by grant funding. The use of our Human Services has gone up. If you turn to page 12, you can see the numbers keep increasing. You'll see that with our senior center, really a lot as well. So again, I have Bev Bellady here and Teresa Christoph, should you have any questions.
Up to council for questions. Okay.
This is just Human Services, right? Not senior support?
No.
Okay.
I'll give you a minute if you think you have one.
I'm just gonna take crazy. Last week, on page 157, of the Human Resources, I have highlighted a huge increase, but what's the increase, if you can say?
Where?
Page 157.
Yep.
Says it's like a 30,966.
What column are you in?
Two goes down. Page 157.
37,966.
Yeah,
That's what I said. That was the attrition.
that was nutrition, okay. And then I know we mentioned it on Thursday that you guys might be seeing more people apply for more needs for, because other assessments have gone up. Jason anticipates a higher enrollment in that.
For which program? Sorry.
For the ordinance 60, and because the assessments went up, I believe Jason said on Thursday that they think they're gonna see more people enrolled in that program.
Yeah, and more people are coming to our office in general, I'd say, especially people who didn't necessarily even want food assistance in the past. They're finding that can offset their other financial costs. So we're seeing more people through our doors for sure.
Thank you, Brian.
Just one follow-up question. So is that something that you've been seeing sort of like ongoing, it's building up more people coming in, or is that since the reval, since the budget's come out, like are you seeing, do you know, like is it because of that, or is it just you've in general seen an increase in
I
people?
think it's in general too, but I have to say that my staff has done an excellent job of social media, advertising the programs, doing really cross screening when they come in. You know, so when somebody comes in for maybe renter's rebate, we're finding out they're eligible for fuel assistance and other programs. So I think it's a really collaborative effort, and even at the senior center referring, even the people that volunteer to do taxes, the ARP, they actually were referring back to us too. So it's kind of, you know, I think it's kind of that general, and again, Teresa's excellent in doing social media posts as well as Kyle, so I think that's part of it. They found us.
If you look on the screen, you can see by year, everything basically going up, and you'll look at, if you can go to the next page. There too, just a steady increase from previous years, and you know, again, we're coming out of COVID in 21, but
Thank you for everything you guys do to get the word out there. I mean, you know, you do a lot and you help a lot of people, and it's you know, we're always trying to find ways to get more people to be aware of what they're available for. So all the people that you refer, cross programs and all that, I think is really important work. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course.
Any other questions from counselors? Thank you, Bill, for coming and answering our questions tonight.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the senior center, Brian, when you're ready.
all right. Again, our Senior Center Director, Kyle Siemnes, is here. Should you have any questions? I'm proposing a total budget for the senior center of $105,201. It's an overall increase of $498. There was a significant reduction in communications, $690, a part of when Yolita got here. We started to go through all our Zoom accounts, all our cell phones, iPads accounts, anything that we could fleece that was not needed. And this was one of the places we found in the senior center where we were able to get rid of a cell phone and a Zoom account. A decrease in $30 in dues and memberships. I think we got rid of the Costco, increase in $167 in other services, but I also allocated $500 to the senior center programs as a part of our cannabis fund for events. Again, community events specifically named in our cannabis fund policy. So really the increase of $498 is covered by the cannabis fund. So it's basically a flat budget coming out of the senior center.
Thank you. Any questions up on the senior center? Councilor Moran?
But just one, are you still seeing an increase in the amount of people you have coming into the senior center?
Definitely are, and especially at this point in the year, we're definitely getting, the snowbirds are coming back.
Sure.
And it's getting lighter out at night, so we've definitely seen an increase of participants walking through the door.
That's great. And
There's some
so
performance data again.
that's great, especially having a more or less consistent budget as last year, and serving even a a larger population. So thank you. I think that's great.
Any other questions for senior center people? I guess I have a general question. So we're taking some money from the cannabis fund, not a lot, but Yolita or Brian, do you know offhand about how much we're going to be withdrawing from cannabis fund this year to fund?
Not nearly half of it. I don't even think we're at. You saw
It's like
3,000 to the PCC, 500 here, someone there, and we're expecting to get 40,000 or so.
Yeah,
I'm being very conservative. I'm not confident in that, but we'll see.
okay. Yeah, it didn't seem like it was a huge amount, but.
And, you've seen these places go out of business too.
Yeah,
Which I just don't want to rely too heavily on this, so I'm being conservative.
yeah, that was under more my concern is the direction we're using too much, not too little, especially since it's, I don't know.
Maybe the concern too little is probably more accurate, but we'll find a way.
Yeah. Questions from those online? Last call, questions for the senior center? Good? All right. Thank you, Bill.
All right, moving on to our wonderful library, and I have our library director, Mary Ann Pelletier here. I'm proposing this year $463,487, up a modest $1,200 as compared to last year. The increase is due to a cost of biblionation and other services and fees, and an increase of $110 in training and development, which is an increase in cost by the Connecticut Libraries Association. Moving through, you see that obviously the services our library provides. There's so many programs. Like the other places, our attendance is up nearly 6,000. Reference questions were answered last year. 109,000 books went out in circulation, and 65,000 people visited the library in fiscal year 2024, including 6,712 people went to our wonderful programs that we have in our program room there. So again, Director Pelletier is here should you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for counselors on the library budget? It's essentially flat.
Yep.
Yeah. One more. All right, thank you.
All right, moving on. Recreation Department, again, Director Bruce Watt is here. Should you have any questions when I'm done, I'm proposing $188,946 for the recreation budget. That's an increase of $18,056. The beef of that increase is moving a part-time employee, 24-hour employee up to 35 hours. Our rec coordinator, that is the increase as the numbers of our rec programs have increased, the responsibilities increase. Bruce is running around like crazy and really could use the assistance. I recommend paying that out of our budget. Others have recommended paying it out of the recreation fund. Our recreation fund currently has about $300,000 in it. The rec board agrees that they would prefer it to be paid out of the general fund budget. I don't like the precedent of dipping into the rec fund for salary. But I understand if that's the direction we want to go in. So Director Watt is here. Should you have any questions about that increase? We all know the good things that our rec center does. Their numbers are up and doing well. The success of our ARPA money to help fund our camps and get kids back into our camps has been resoundingly successful.
Thank you. Any questions on the rec department?
Two questions. What does the recreation fund get used for?
Pays for everything except basically the salaries, like my salary. But it pays for our administrative assistant salary. Any program material that is needed comes out of there. Any kind of all our part-time staff salaries is all paid through the recreation fund. It's also funded some capital improvement projects. Paid for the new playground at the rec center. 40,000 of it once was used to upgrade the heating system at the rec center. It's upgraded the lighting system at Crandall with the Musco control that allows us to control it from our computers. So there's a vast majority of things that the rec fund is covering.
And is that funded with like the revenue that you bring in through summer camps?
Yeah, everything we generate is it's how that is funded.
And do you know how much you typically generate in a given year?
Obviously it ranges, depends on our registration, how many people participate, but I would say on average anywhere from 300 to 350.
Okay.
You have some big projects. The building at Crandall's, the one that was built in the 50s or 60s, I believe, and then the lighting, changing to LED lighting at Crandall's down the road. I have no intent in using the rec fund for that. But as you know, things happen when you build and do things over. So just options. They're both of those are funded in the capital plan. Not to be misleading. So they're both in the capital plan. I intend on going after bond money for the building. We're working with our state reps to do that. But again, that's as he stated, the intent of that fund.
In the, yeah, I'm not holding you to a specific number, but the 300, 350, whatever, it's pretty consistent that we're bringing in. Because are you seeing a steady increase or interest in all the programs that we have? It seems like you've had pretty successful.
Almost definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think if you exclude COVID, we've always been positive every fiscal year.
Okay.
And steadily increasing since I've been there.
Okay.
So, we haven't really seen a dip except for COVID and kind of coming out.
Yeah.
But it seems like we're at full force.
Thank you. Thank you for all the great work you guys do.
Thank you.
Any other questions for counselors? I guess I'll ask a question. So the major driver here is bringing the part-time person to full-time. And I get a high level reasoning for that, but can you just provide a little bit more color as to what the benefits of bringing that person on full-time? Like what services are we not meeting today, or gaps that need to be closed that would be solved by bringing this person on?
It definitely allows us to bring in more new programs. There's just so many new programs that I can personally oversee on my own. But it's also going to allow us to expand for say for summer camp programming, which our wait list right now is tremendous. Our after school program would allow us to expand that if we need to. It also gives me time to concentrate more on administrative work where this position can strictly focus on providing the needs for these programs that they need to get out the advertisement. So since we have been here in this part-time position as well, we've been able to add programs like child and parent classes at the rec center, which we didn't have before. So it's also filling that gap before kind of that age of say like 4 or 3 or 4 with our preschool program, but not really just kind of program to come in, be active and socialize. So we're bridging that lower gap, but also being able to expand on the successful programs that we already have to allow more residents into our programs.
Okay. Is there a chance that this might be kind of a position that could potentially kind of pay for itself if we're adding, we're able to expand the amount of people we enroll or offer new programs?
I mean, it's always gonna bring in more revenue.
Yeah,
So I would assume it should be able to eventually pay for itself. I just think looking forward, if we're looking to stay successful and make sure that we're gonna have the funding for programming and growth in the department, it really needs to be focused to say like, we are gonna keep this as a full-time in the general fund. Instead of saying the rec fund is responsible for paying for 2 full-time staff members at this point in time, because the administrative assistant position is already coming out, and now status quo, another full-time employee. We're asking a lot out of the rec fund to pay for just full-time staff to keep us operating but also to pay for all our part-timers that are needed, all the materials that are needed, our contracted services that are needed. Eventually, I think there's gonna be needed some give if we're gonna want to keep allowing some flexibility and capital improvements and other improvements that could be funded, not in the general fund.
okay, thank you. I appreciate you adding a little bit more detail to that. Any other questions from counselors? Thank you.
Okay,
Good.
I just want to follow up on Jacob and some of what I was asking. I don't know if this is a Bruce question or a Yolita question. Do you know how much money is left over in the rec fund each year after we pay what we typically pay out of it?
So I can just say as of June 30th, 2024, for past fiscal year closed, the unassigned fund balance was $263,000.
For the rec center?
The recreation fund,
Oh, sorry, yeah.
recreation fund,
Sorry, can you say that number again, Yolita?
263,000 unassigned fund balance.
And do you know how much we had the rec center brought in that fiscal year? Revenue,
You mean for recreation fund?
yeah, like that money that went in. I'm just looking like how much goes in versus how much is going out.
I think I can pull that information.
That'd be
This is
great.
more detailed.
Thanks. So yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks.
Thank you. Good. Thank you. This is our last item. Really fast. Board of Education. Sure.
So in 2024, a year characterized as multiple failed referendums. My proposed budget included the complete ask of the Board of Education budget. The proposed budget for 2025, unfortunately, must take into consideration the historical context of the referendums in our town. Board of Ed budget, I'm recommending an increase of 2.99% or $1,311,493,000 increase for fiscal year 2025-2026 for a total budget recommendation of $45,174,141. I'm sorry, $45,174,141. Dr. Willett is here should you have any questions.
Thank you. Open it up to counselors for questions. So Counselor Noonan raised his hand. Counselor Noonan, you're welcome to speak.
You can try to unmute. Go to his mute button, left. Up, right there, down. Oh, it has to be perfect. Hit it.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
So I apologize, not being able to be there this evening. Just a quick question for Dr. Willett before I ask kind of where Brian's head was at with this. Or Dr. Willett, you could give your ideal answer. Could you explain what your ideal situation for protection at the schools would be for our 4 schools here in Tolland, whether that be a post-certified officer or private security?
So for the budget coming up, we give what it seems like would be a reasonable ask for the town, that the town could support. And so the Board of Ed budget that was adopted has 2 post-certified SROs and a security officer. That also, the budget also includes a lot of other staff that are meant to mitigate and handle behavior situations or any risk that may arise. There's response teams, there's behavior interventionists, there's board certified behavior analysts, and a bunch of infrastructure. But as far as budgeted positions are concerned, the Board of Ed adopted budget supported 2 post-trained SRO officers that would report to the resident troop commander and 1 security officer.
Counselor Noonan, I don't know if you had anything to say, but you are muted. Does that answer your question?
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, it keeps saying that you have to allow me to unmute.
Yep. Would you like to make your co-host?
So, okay, Dr. Willett, I appreciate you answering that question. Do you feel, so these are 2 post-certified officers that will, they will come into command at Troop C and follow orders from Troop C, and do you have a preference to the schools that these 2 troopers are going to be dispersed to? And had you previously, through the asks of the residents of town, myself and others, considered having 1 trooper per school?
Well, so the process that we go through for the budget involves what the Board of Education ultimately has determined as, what it feels is necessary for the school system. People can ask me for, my thoughts on things. I'd be happy to answer it. But as far as the budget is concerned, that's what was in the budget. The way it works for our school system is we've had a great relationship with the Connecticut State Troopers and the Resident Trooper Office. In the beginning of this, when we started it way back, Steve Orbner was the town manager, and all the way through the years, we've had an arrangement where the SROs meet with me on a weekly basis. We go over all of the needs of the school system, including any scheduled events or things that might be coming up that would need additional attention, and we set the schedule week to week. So with our 2 24-hour SROs, I would toggle them throughout all of the schools based on both their opinion of where they felt like they were needed and certain things that were coming up in the school district where we might, maybe able to use their help the most. For instance, if we were going to do a district lockdown drill for a certain day, we might have them positioned in certain places. If there's other events going on where a lot of public would be coming in on different days, we might move them to different schools for that. So we basically designed it around what the needs for security were of the schools on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis, rather than having them, assigned in one place for for the whole time. Now, having said that, the high school had the most space, so we did have the SRO office. There was an official office for the SRO at the high school, but they moved around the district as needed based on our week-to-week, day-to-day and week-to-week needs.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Are you reconsidering having a satellite office, if you will, back at the high school? If said officer would be more present in that school?
Alex, if I could jump in for a second and what Dr. Willett just said, under the constabulary protocols of the state with the state police, technically the constabulary falls under the state police. However, I completely agree with Dr. Willett that they would get their direction entirely from Dr. Willett in regards to day-to-day staffing and not the state police in regards to these guys are in our schools. Dr. Willett's in the best position to make those types of calls. And keep in mind that we do still have the state police here should we need them at any point within the schools or to be at the schools at some point. So I just wanted to support what the doc just said, and then I'll go back to him now for the office question you just had.
So if I understand your question, Mr. Noonan. I think what you're saying is, could a satellite office of the state troop exist within the high school kind of thing?
Correct.
And I believe, when we looked at that, there were some feelings that that would not be an optimal arrangement because people need to come in and see the state police for a variety of things. And that might actually draw people into the school building that would be involved in, other activities or complaining about something that is illegal or, so this would actually potentially bring issues into the school versus having a resource, for the school. So they kind of decided that having it at the resident troop office would keep that dynamic from occurring and to focus more on the SRO post-trained officers, being in the school.
So from my understanding, when we did have an active trooper within the confines of the Tolland High School, I'm sure that report writing and, having the ability to be able to do things clerically, at their own leisure and at their own pace, on their mobile computer or what have you, could certainly happen. I wasn't under the impression that other people of the folks of the public were coming in and asking questions to that trooper. I just was under the impression that trooper was solely there to improve community policing within that school and that milieu, to be closer to the students if needed, and then after administration, after school hours, kind of fall back into a regular trooper role.
That is how we had it, but they're not trooper. The SROs we've had are 24-hour SROs, 24-hour SROs. So they're basically there during the typical school day. And then, as I said, we meet with them weekly. So I might ask if they can go to a music event at night or to a sports event, that type of thing. But essentially, they did have an office, space in the school, and they could do a lot of their administrivia in the school, paperwork in the school, that type of thing in the school. They were furnished with laptops, all of that. I might have misunderstood your question. I thought you were asking about having a separate kind of satellite trooper office in the school.
Oh, no.
That's what I was referring to there. But with the SROs in the school, yes, we have had them in, they are at a desk. They are able to do some of their paperwork there or electronic work there, et cetera.
Fantastic. So, Brian, in your purview here and in what you've supplemented us, do you think that having, obviously 2 is better than none, but do you think having 2 troopers dispersed at Dr. Willett's discretion and based on given needs is sufficient and included in your budget?
2 constables, you mean?
Well, I would love to have constable services here, but no, 2 troopers from Troop C at our schools.
Anything's better than nothing, 1. 2, I'd rather, looking at the fiscal realities of our town, I'd rather pay 2 constables than the cost of a trooper. But 2 troopers could adequately do the same job as the 2 constables.
Is that currently what you have outlined in your budget, what Dr. Willett just mentioned?
2 constables, yes. SROs. When I say constable, I mean SRO, I'm sorry.
And those are 2 SROs that report to Master Command of State Police, Troop C.
Technically, as far as Police Officer Standards Training Council is concerned, they fall under the state police's guidance.
Okay.
Or in regards to where they're going to be in the schools and what hours they're going to do is entirely on the shoulders of Dr. Wood, which I truly embrace.
And really quickly, just to not to monopolize the Board of Education, conversation in its entirety, could you explain why, for the town of Tolland, having a constable service might be an advantage or a disadvantage?
Financially, hard stop.
Yeah.
Financially, it's we can do them at 24 hours each, instead of paying a full-time trooper to do the same job. Moreover, in order to hire a SRO or constable here, the town has to become certified as its own police department per se in regards to accreditation. So we have to get accreditation in order to hire a constable. We can do that as we can work on getting the certification with the state and still hire. We don't have to be completely certified prior to, we can get through those steps. If we were to get certification, we could look down the road at cutting back on the number of resident troopers that we have and hiring constables, again, 24 hours, apiece, and being able to scatter them at much different hours and days and such at our control based on statistics. And that is how the vast majority of resident state trooper towns work, is that they have much like Ellington, Summers, Stafford, they all have a resident trooper that oversees multiple constables.
Yeah, I think that'd be definitely something to use to our advantage if we could move toward that in the future. I'm not sure if we could, as a council this year with our time to serve left that we have, could spark that. But I think that would definitely be beneficial to our town. I just wanted to thank Dr. Willett, Tony Holt. Tony, I really don't agree with everything that you have for the Board of Education budget. This is definitely one of them, though. Obviously, you know that I've been very passionate about having our schools secure, having the right personnel there, and all the work behind scenes that you and Dr. Willett and everyone else on the board have implemented. I thank you for, and hopefully we can have this be part of the budget. So thank you.
And I want to clear up one thing too, Jacob. I don't know if I said it before. I offered to, out of the town fund, to pay for the accreditation process. Not a big chunk, but the town has to be accredited and the town has to hire the police officer. But again, once that happens, it's all his, but we will see some benefit out of the accreditation. So no sense in making the Board of Ed pay for the accreditation that we're going to likely see the long-term benefits of.
That's good. That's in this year's budget?
It's like $2,000. Yeah, if we have, did we move it yet? How are we going to pay for the accreditation? I know I told you I would pay for it.
Yeah, when the time comes, when that bill is sent.
Yeah, it's hourly at 50. We'll be able to find that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send it.
So Brian, our accreditation toward moving to obtain constables or being able to house constables in town that's $2,000?
The accreditation is a 3-tier process. It
Okay.
appears as though maybe it's for each tier, it will cost us about, to hire a consultant at about $50 an hour. Again, that the constables on the town side, not the SROs, the constable on the town side at this point is just hypothetical and something to think about down the road. Not anything that we're doing into this budget, as we don't know we're going to be accredited. It's going to take a little while.
Okay. All right. I'm sure we can cross that bridge when we get there, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other counselors with questions on the Board of Education budget? Councilor Moran.
One question and one comment. Where are we at as far as with the Board of Ed in an MOU with either the state police or, I know we have to get this accreditation process going, but does that happen before we do this?
Done.
Oh, the MOU is done?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Thanks to Will. Yep.
okay, great.
We couldn't move, some discrepancy. We couldn't move forward without said MOU.
Yep.
I still have some heavy issues with the department desk, but I'll work through those.
Yep.
I didn't want it to get in the way of SROs.
Yeah.
This we did for 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other comment, this is just more of a comment. So, and I don't want to get too deep into like broader budget discussions. Obviously this year's going to be a difficult year and it's sort of a unique year given the revals and the disproportionate impact that's having on residential property taxes versus commercial. But I do think in the long term, the council and the Board of Ed has to find a way to work better throughout the budget process because we have a number now in front of us, but it's not obviously what the Board of Ed passed, and I'm not saying that that's what should have or should have not been presented to us. But the Board of Ed spends time developing their budget, and then we face financial realities for the town. But it just seems like it's time that's not well spent on both sides. And so there's something that I just think that overall, the process needs to work a little differently because we should be able to just look to the Board of Ed budget and be able to rely on it. And that obviously that hasn't happened. I'm not saying that the Board of Ed's budget's not reliable, but for years, that's changed. And I don't know that that's how other towns do it. So it's just a broader thing that I want to point out that it makes for a difficult process for us, I think, and probably for the board as well. Versus like when we go through our town departments, we have sort of what the current proposed budget is. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other counselors, questions on the Board of Education budget? Yes.
Follow up to Chris's question about the MOU, does that have an expiration?
Yep.
I'm sorry,
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't have to add the name. Is that, how long is it for? Like, when does it expire?
Every 2 years, we can define that. And right now it's defined as every 2 years, but I think there was a good chunk of it missing, so it might have to come up again. Do you remember, Doc Will? It was like in August or September? But it won't, we'll see, we'll get through it.
I'm sorry, is it expiring in the near future?
I can check and get back to you. I think it's August, but I'm not positive.
Because what I'm trying to figure out is that gonna put a damper on hiring
No.
an SRO? It's not going to.
If it were, I'll sign it.
Okay. As far as the budget process goes, so I think it says in here, there's 2 adopted budgets from the Board of Ed, but I think the original one, the 11% one is like the superintendent's proposed budget. Second one is the actual adopted budget, correct? I'm looking at 255. So since the Board of Ed adopted 2 separate budgets, the first budget was for 11.1% increase, and then the second budget was for 7.34, but I think that might be a typo.
Sounds right. I don't know. See a nod from Dr. Willett.
Yeah, that is correct. The
Yeah.
first budget, the 11% was my budget to the board. And the 7.34% was the board's adopted budget request to be provided to the town. So that is accurate with your seeing.
Okay, so 7.34 is actually what was adopted by the Board of Ed. So how do we get from 7.34 adopted budget from the Board of Ed to a 2.99% proposed budget from the town manager? So can you walk me through the process of going from and maybe you don't even take that into consideration, but from that number down to the 2.99?
Yeah, last year I was directed to put the entire Board of Ed request forward. I didn't want to relive that this year. I cannot turn a blind eye to the history of our referendum. And what we went through last year, no one wants to go through again. So with that, I worked with Yolita to find something that I believe would get the Board of Ed the most money we could and still pass a referendum. And fingers crossed, I hope this is enough.
And that sounds fantastic, but how do you come up with that number? Like, where does that number come from?
I work with Yolita to try to get down, what can we get down to get our overall increase down to, I wanted to be below 3%, but it's at 3.03 combined with the town budget.
Yeah.
A 2.8 increase, 2.9 for the Board of Ed, and then all the other factors involved brought us to a 3.03. We could have kept working to get it down to below a 3.03, but I'm hoping that the 299 passes.
And I do too. What I'm trying to find out is, are you looking at numbers from last year and saying, okay, with put inflation into the mix here, we're going up to 2. And what I'm trying to figure out is, how do you know that's the amount of money that can keep the schools afloat, without directly consulting with the Board of Ed?
What do you mean by afloat?
So 2.99%, right?
Yep.
So we know our budgets kind of stick around 3%.
Yep.
Can pass, right?
Yep.
How do we know that that's enough money to keep the schools going, even if just as is? Take last year, copy paste next year.
Yep.
Right? How do we know that?
In watching the Board of Ed meetings, in watching the last 20 years, being told our house values are gonna drop if we don't fund our schools, and getting slapped in the face the reality of none of our house values dropping, in fact, increasing 50%. And then looking at the history of the referendum. How bad last year was, I put forth the full recommended Board of Ed budget. We put forth a very high Board of Ed budget out to referendum. It failed. The next one failed, the next one failed, and then the fourth one passed at much lower. And then I thought, this is an effort to circumvent the budget getting chopped and chopped and chopped like it did last year to well below this increase, or 3%. This is an effort to thwart that and hopefully keep it at a 2.99 increase is the best way that I can put it. I understand your question.
So
Again,
you're trying to bypass dealing with that whole thing and just kind of getting a number where you know we reach a happy medium. So you have a dollar amount that's sufficient to keep our schools afloat to your best of your ability. That's your opinion.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to bypass
And bypass what happened
the
last.
Board of Ed losing even more money through multiple referendums. That's what I'm trying to bypass.
Right.
I can start higher again, where I could have started higher again. I started high last year
Mhm.
and we got pounded. I'm trying to thwart that. That's what this was.
Okay. With that being said, if from your kind of trying to put together a number that is kind of a happy medium, right?
Your words.
Okay, of course they are. They're coming out right now.
It's,
So you end up at a 2.9 and you think that's fair, you think that can pass, right? If we get below that number though for Board of Ed, I mean, do we know what impact that has? Have you had discussions with the superintendent as far as going below that number goes? I'm trying to figure out, I mean, it sounds.
I have had
fair.
discussions with the superintendent about that.
Mhm.
I've had discussions with our chair about that. Opinions vary greatly. Very greatly. And again, I would love to have our schools fully funded and have Dr. Willett's 11.1% if we could afford it. We can't. We can't, and we got it shoved down our throats last year for trying to put forward a budget that the town thought was too high. And had we have gone with my plan last year and taken an approach that we have this year, I believe we would have gotten more money to the Board of Ed last year. That did not happen. I can't prove that. That is just my personal opinion. Again, this is my best-hearted effort to try to get this budget passed. I'm skeptical about that. I'm sure we all are, unfortunately. I would love for this to go through. I have a daughter in the school who I tell Dr. Willett, I couldn't be any happier with her education. I really couldn't be any happier. And the services provided all throughout. That being said, I'm the town manager. I'm not the Board of Education. I'm not an expert on education. I have an expert on finances who assists me. I have a boatload of referendum history, which I forgot to send out. I've had it done, but you saw it on my desk, that I'd like to get to you, but you know, it's unfortunate. I know you would have liked me to recommend more. I get it. I had to make the best decision I could make.
So I guess so coming from other towns and seeing how other towns do their budget process, it feels like in a lot of towns, the Board of Ed goes through their process and they kind of discuss the budget. I mean, like we can't go through and find with a fine tooth comb and go through the Board of Ed budget, and that's why we have them. That's why they're elected officials, and they go through it. And a lot of towns, you go through the budget, and that kind of goes forward to the town council, and the town council makes minor adjustments, and that's it. I feel like we're kind of losing that process here in Tolland. You know, it almost, to be honest, and I'm not saying this is your fault, Brian,
I got you.
it feels like they go through this process and it's kind of like,
Irrelevant.
yeah, a little bit. I don't know if there's anything that could be suggested to make,
Open the charter, change the referendum process somehow better to fit the needs you're describing. Would be my best suggestion. Look at it that way. The way it's built now, I gotta make my recommendation. Again, I'm not a Board of Ed expert. And financial expert that has me, I have two polar opinions here in town. I can go back 20 years and show you the exact same emails that we get sent during budget process. They say the exact same things on both sides. I have to take the weight of everything with me. I understand you don't like the process. I assure you I don't like it either, and would be open to exploring other options. So 100% agree with you. And you look at other towns, I'm sure you're doing like, hey, that's a pretty good way of doing it. I'm with you on that.
yeah, I wouldn't want them to have to waste their time doing
Yep.
this year after year.
I get it.
And there's gotta be something to fix this, so it's a better process just in general. So that we're all kind of coming together and not saying, you know, here's what we gotta do to pass this referendum, but it doesn't take anything that you guys have done for the past couple of years into consideration. And again, I'm not saying anything, I
I get it.
understand the position you're in.
I get it. Yes, don't worry about me.
So, I think with that being said, I don't think I have any other questions.
Council Buckler? Any other questions for the Board of Education budget from town councilors? If you're good.
I just want to follow up to what I mentioned earlier and a little bit of what Councilor Buckler mentioned. That sort of was my point as far as the Board of Ed spending a lot of time on a budget that ultimately doesn't see the light of day on council. And I don't think that that's solely the council or the town manager's fault, and it's not the Board of Ed's fault either. But whether it's opening the charter or whether it's having these conversations, it would be nice in an ideal world to be to a place where the council received a budget from Board of Ed that was largely relied on and adopted. And you know, it's not the fault of either council or Board of Ed or the superintendent or the town manager. It's just the process we have, which is not working, I don't think. And then the only other thing I'll just say is that I think, Brian, you mentioned that, you know, you and the chair had a conversation, and so I just would have liked obviously to have been.
No, it wasn't like
Well-
that kind of informal. Yeah, it wasn't like a,
No, I'm not saying.
we didn't discuss like the budget.
I'm not saying that,
Yeah,
I'm not accusing anything, but I'm just saying that, I'm not saying that you guys had an improper conversation at all. But the more we can work together, I think the better. But, you know, I think I understand why you put forward what you did.
We've had casual conversations.
Yep, we have.
We've had casual conversations, you know, so I mean, just casual wasn't anything.
Yep.
Just like that, but I thank you, agree.
Yeah, I'll just maybe say, I mean, I agree with both of you that I don't think the process right now is very good.
Yep.
I don't know, that's probably good. So let me be more clear. It's not a problem we're gonna solve this
No.
budget cycle, but I agree. I don't think it's a very good process. I don't think the incentives that each board has is aligned with what's best for the town, but something we should look into.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I think Counselor Noonan raised, well, actually, I'll go to Counselor Shay first. He hasn't spoken yet, and then we go to Counselor Noonan.
I'm gonna try am I unmuted?
We can hear you, Joe.
Okay. So I know we talked about trying to get a mill rate based on the prior year's budget to understand, based on the new valuations on the prior year's budget, what would our mill rate be? Has that calculation been completed yet?
Counselor Shay, I think in the assessor's presentation, we did have that number. It's the very last slide.
Yep, I thought he did too.
Oh, was it? Okay. Sorry guys,
I can get that to you, Joe, if you want.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
All right.
Yeah, for some reason I don't recall seeing what that number was, but okay.
Yeah.
So
No, I
we
didn't.
have the revised number.
But we do have.
So, the comment about the system that the town uses, it's a painful system, and there are some towns that basically say that the council decides what the budget will be and what the mill rate will be, and the voters don't. We've had a history where the voters get to decide how much the town can spend, and that would be a very difficult system, I think, in this town particularly to overcome, so that, the Board of Ed basically presents its budget to the town council barely touches it, and then the town council votes by itself without any assistance from the residents what the budget should be. I think there's a challenge there. A lot of towns do that. I just don't think.
So that's not what I was suggesting. I wasn't suggesting getting rid of the referendum at all. I was just talking about a greater, a smoother process between Board of Ed and council. I agree with you that, the referendum sort of is what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we have to talk about what a smoother process would be. Is it, I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. So maybe that's something we talk about after this budget cycle, because like Jacob said, we're not going to solve that tonight. Yeah, I certainly would appreciate any input on that one, because every year it is a painful, and it seems to be getting more painful every year as time goes on. And then the other question I had on the SROs. So would it make any sense to have the state trooper, since we haven't had it, when's the last time we had an SRO in our town? How many years ago was that?
2023, right when I got here. Who did? Okay. Oh, that's right, Duda. We had Duda for a little while. It's been, I want to say a year and a half or so.
About a year and a half, okay.
Two, yep.
Okay, and did we just cut that person out of the budget, or did they quit and we never was able to rehire? Like, what was the reason why we stopped having an SRO in our school? And it was only one, right? We didn't have two.
We did.
I believe that and Dr. Will could probably answer, but the way it was framed, it was impossible to hire. It was very rare that somebody wanted to come and be an SRO under the way the pay and benefits were set up, and having to maintain the certifications, everything. Is that accurate, Doc?
Yeah, well stated. I think to add to it, the structure was 2 24-hour SROs. So what would happen is we got great people, like every SRO we ever had has been great. But when they see the surrounding towns have 40-hour options, they'll hang out with us for a while, but then they go for the 40-hour jobs.
Okay, so the exit interviews just said it's not the job, it's the money.
They want more hours.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had. Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilor Shay. We'll go to Councilor Noonan.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So, okay, this is a question for Dr. Willett. Money aside, I know that's a big topic of contention here, but you've been doing this for a while. I've always appreciated what you've done for our schools. When I was a kid, you were my principal at one point, so you've definitely been helping Tolland for a while here. And like I said, money aside, do you think this year there's anything that specifically stood out to you that would be a need? I know that insurance was seemingly skyrocketed, and perhaps cost of fuel, depending on the prices a few months ago and even the past couple of years. But are there any outliers in your mind, or things that you haven't seen in past years that are kind of coming to the surface now that might be an issue?
Well, first, let me compliment Mr. Noonan as being a wonderful student. He was great to have him, very well behaved and a super academic genius. But as far as the schools are concerned, and the budgets, it's just a challenging time in Connecticut, and I think every school district is feeling that. I would have a hard time kind of narrowing it to one thing, but I think what I can say is that you know, that 80% generally of the budget here is contractual obligations, things like that. And it's not that they were badly negotiated contracts either, because negotiated contracts were at or below the average settlement for, you know, just about everything. So it's just a tough time. You know, Tolland's per pupil expenditure is about 132 out of 166. It's in the lowest quartile. The 5-year average budget has been 1.88%, 12 years about 1.73 roughly. Fiscal year 06 to 25, 47 teaching positions were reduced to adjust for enrollment over that span of time. So I think Tolland has made these adjustments and tried to get into the right, you know, to the best space it can possibly be in. I would say if there's one thing on my mind is that, you know, enrollment levels out in year 27, 28, and then it starts to climb by about 8.2% through 2035. So we're going to gain about 8.2% more kids from that point forward. And I'd say that's the thing that's on my mind now, is trying to figure out how to adjust to that and the adjustments that, you know, the state is making and the federal government are making and all of that.
Appreciate that. And just another quick question. I've certainly gotten the sentiments of, you know, my constituents on council, others on council, as many as I can, in their opinion on this matter. But your opinion in this specific question is something I'm certainly interested in seeing if we could accomplish or ask for help with. But when it comes to student expenditure in our town, in our county in specific, do you think that's something that realistically could be pushed to a Tim Ackert or, you know, Tammy or someone that could help as to why our students in our county may not be receiving the same funding or the same attention from the state that others may be?
You know, I would compliment our 3 state representatives. You know, I think that they have worked very hard in the legislature. I think it's a very tough mechanism, you know, right now because, you know, the way people view ECS, they kind of view Tolland as, you know, being able to take it. You know, and I think the problem with the, you know, we have a lot of mandates, a lot of funding mandates. And, you know, the challenge there is that we can be asked, like, what are the top 3 mandates we would like addressed? But it's kind of like the minute we answer that question, they're adding 15 more mandates the second you tell them the 3 that are affecting you, right? So the problem is the mechanism itself. The problem is the implementer bills where there's no public participation and they pass a bunch of stuff that the, you know, 2 parties agree to that, you know, that make it harder for school systems and more expensive. The mechanism itself is the problem. And so that's a hard thing for any state representatives to address in such a, you know, such a complex system. So I give them credit for doing what they're doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Noonan. I see Councilor Beebe raised her hand.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. And I'm going to try not to cough on you. So just going back to the previous discussion, I want to echo the other counselors on the need to investigate a way to improve our system. I'm going to outage Brian by a bit when I say going back 40 years, a lot of the conversations were the same as they are now. However, and a lot of you may not know this, we had a town meeting process before we had a referendum. So we used to all get together in the auditorium and it was just like meeting day in Vermont, and we had a town meeting on the budget, and at the end of the meeting, people would raise their hands one way or the other, and that's how the budget got passed. The benefit to that was that it created some robust conversation. People were not always happy, but there was some real robust conversation, and there were some compromises made. And I think if we could find a way to analyze what other towns are doing and maybe get some input on that, we could create a better system than we've got now. Because I agree with the other counselors that this is hasn't been especially beneficial and productive in the last couple decades. And then the other thing that I wanted to was illuminating for me as I was doing research on the cost per pupil is that the the lower the number of students in every town, the higher the cost per pupil is. So like Ashford and Willington spend about $5,000 more per pupil than we do, according to 2023 data. And please, Dr. Willett, correct me if I'm wrong. And that really kind of was illuminating for me. So when we look at our cost per pupil, I think we need to keep in mind also that some of our sister towns with lower student populations actually spend a lot more per pupil than we do, which probably has to do with the core infrastructure that they have to maintain, even though they may not have high schools, right? So Ashford and Willington don't have high schools. And I agree with with Dr. Willett on the need to find funding for some of the mandates that are coming down, because I agree with a lot of the intent, but I think that we as a community, as a state, as a population, need to be able to find ways to pay for the things that we want. And that's it for right now.
Thank you, Councilor Beebe. Right. One more time for questions, if anybody has any. Great. That. So that concludes our section for Board of Education discussion. That concludes our conversation for tonight. So is there any objection for adjournment at 8:09 p.m.? Without objection, we're adjourned.